In the misty highlands of West Java, where volcanic peaks pierce ancient clouds and the earth holds secrets older than memory, there stands a mountain that whispers of impossibilities. Its name is Gunung Padang, the Mountain of Enlightenment, and it may be the most controversial archaeological site on Earth. Here's where it gets interesting. Scientists using ground-penetrating radar have detected hidden chambers deep within the mountain. Radiocarbon dating of materials from the deepest layers has returned dates that seem impossible, 27,000 years old. If true, that would make Gunung Padang older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than any known civilization. What if, buried beneath centuries of soil and jungle growth, lies evidence of something that could rewrite everything we know about human civilization? Welcome to Sleep Mysteries, where hidden history meets your bedtime. Tonight, we're going to explore a mystery that has divided the scientific community and sparked one of the most heated debates in modern archaeology. What if a lost civilization, forgotten by history and erased by time, built the world's first pyramid not in Egypt, not in Mesopotamia, but on a volcanic mountain in Indonesia during the height of the last ice age? If you're drawn to these ancient mysteries, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, settle in as we climb the 370 stone steps of Gunung Padang and uncover a story that might change history itself. Long before archaeologists arrived with their instruments and theories, the people of West Java already knew that Gunung Padang was special. For generations, local communities have treated the mountain as sacred ground, a place where the ordinary world grows thin and something greater can be felt. They call it the Mountain of Enlightenment, and their stories speak of kings who tried to build palaces here in a single night, of floods that once covered the lowlands, of stones that hum with ancient power. The Sundanese people tell of King Siliwangi, a legendary ruler who desired a magnificent palace on the mountain's summit. He worked through the night with supernatural helpers, placing stone upon stone in a desperate race against dawn. But when the first light touched the peaks, his work remained unfinished, the terraces standing as silent testimony to ambitions that even kings could not complete. Some say spirits intervened to stop him. Others believe the gods themselves drew a line between mortal desire and divine territory. When you walk the paths of Gunung Padang today, you can feel why the local people consider it sacred. The site covers nearly 40 acres, spreading across the flattened peak of an extinct volcano. 5 massive terraces rise in careful steps, each one supported by retaining walls built from enormous stone columns. These aren't rough-hewn blocks dragged into place. They're perfectly formed hexagonal columns, some standing as tall as a person, fitted together with a precision that would challenge modern engineers. The stones themselves are volcanic andesite, formed by the same geological processes that created the mountain. But here's what makes them extraordinary. They exhibit a natural phenomenon called columnar jointing, where cooling lava creates these perfect geometric shapes. It's as if nature provided the building blocks, and someone with incredible skill arranged them into this monumental structure. The columns vary in size and symmetry, some perfectly hexagonal, others with 5 or 7 sides, creating a complex puzzle that somehow fits together into terraced platforms that have stood for thousands of years. As you climb the 370 stone steps leading to the summit, each footfall takes you deeper into mystery. The pathway isn't random. It follows deliberate angles and alignments that seem to track celestial movements. Some researchers believe the entire structure was designed as a massive astronomical observatory, its terraces aligned with solstices and equinoxes, its stone columns marking the passage of seasons and the dance of stars overhead. But it's not just the arrangement of stones that captures attention, it's what lies beneath them. In recent years, scientists have used sophisticated scanning technology to peer into the mountain's depths, and what they've found defies easy explanation. Ground-penetrating radar reveals vast hollow spaces deep within the structure, chambers and corridors that appear too regular to be natural formations. These aren't random caves carved by water and time. They're geometric spaces that suggest intentional design, rooms and passages waiting in darkness, sealed beneath layers of stone and soil. If these chambers exist, if they were built by human hands, then Gunung Padang isn't just a surface monument. It's a complex, multi-level structure that extends deep into the mountain itself. Think about what that means. Whoever built this didn't just stack stones on a hillside. They carved into solid volcanic rock, creating internal spaces that required engineering knowledge we're only beginning to understand. This brings us to the heart of the controversy that has divided archaeologists and geologists around the world. In 2011, a team led by Dr. Danny Hilman Natawijaja, a respected Indonesian geologist, began the most comprehensive study of Gunung Padang ever undertaken. Using seismic tomography, electrical resistivity mapping, and ground-penetrating radar, they created detailed images of the mountain's internal structure. What they found challenged every assumption about the site's age and origin. The team's core drilling revealed that Gunung Padang was built in distinct phases, each separated by thousands of years. The surface layer, the terraces and stone arrangements visible today, appear to date from around 500 to 1500 CE, placing it within known historical periods of Indonesian civilization. This matched what most archaeologists expected: an impressive but relatively recent megalithic site, built by sophisticated but historically documented cultures. But beneath this surface layer lay something far more intriguing. At depths of several meters, the drilling revealed another phase of construction, this one dating to approximately 8,000 years ago. Stone arrangements at this level showed clear signs of human modification. Carefully shaped blocks, mortar-like binding agents, and structural patterns that couldn't be explained by natural processes. This was already pushing the boundaries of what archaeologists thought possible for the region, suggesting that organized construction projects were taking place in Indonesia thousands of years before the rise of known civilizations. Yet even this revelation paled beside what the deepest drilling uncovered. At depths of 15 meters and more, core samples revealed what appeared to be the oldest phase of construction, and the radiocarbon dates from organic materials at this level returned results that seemed impossible: 25,000 to 27,000 years before present. This wasn't just old, it was ancient beyond any known human civilization. It placed construction activity at Gunung Padang during the height of the last ice age, when glaciers covered much of Europe and North America, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than today, when most archaeologists believe humans were still living in small nomadic bands, hunting mammoths and painting caves. The team's findings suggested that the deepest layers of Gunung Padang contained massive carved chambers, artificial modifications to natural rock formations, and evidence of sophisticated construction techniques that included a cement-like binding agent stronger than modern concrete. If their interpretations were correct, it meant that 27,000 years ago, at a time when conventional archaeology places humanity in the Stone Age, someone was building monuments that rivaled the Great Pyramids of Egypt. The scientific community's response was swift and fierce. Critics argued that the radiocarbon dating was flawed, that organic material in soil could date to ancient periods without indicating human construction. They pointed out that volcanic mountains naturally create columnar jointing and geometric patterns that might be mistaken for artificial construction. Some dismissed the entire project as pseudo-archaeology, an attempt to manufacture mysteries where none existed. The debate reached a crescendo in 2023 when Dr. Natawijaja's team published their findings in Archaeological Prospection, a respected peer-reviewed journal. The paper claimed definitive proof that Gunung Padang was the world's oldest pyramid, built in phases over tens of thousands of years by unknown ancient civilizations. The publication sent shockwaves through the archaeological community and made headlines around the world. But the triumph was short-lived. Within months, concerns raised by other scientists led to a detailed review of the paper's methodology and conclusions. Critics pointed out fundamental flaws in the interpretation of radiocarbon data, arguing that the presence of ancient organic material in soil didn't necessarily indicate human construction activity. They noted that the paper failed to present clear evidence of artifacts or human modifications that could be definitively dated to the claimed ancient periods. In March 2024, the journal took the extraordinary step of retracting the paper, stating that the radiocarbon dating had been applied to soil samples that weren't associated with any artifacts or features that could be reliably interpreted as human-made. The retraction was a devastating blow to claims about Gunung Padang's extreme antiquity, but it didn't end the debate. The site's defenders argued that the retraction was premature, that more research was needed before dismissing such potentially revolutionary findings. This scientific controversy highlights one of the most challenging aspects of archaeology: the interpretation of evidence. The stones of Gunung Padang are real. The chambers detected by radar are real. The sophisticated construction techniques are real. What remains hotly debated is what it all means, who built it, and when. The gap between the physical evidence and its interpretation has created a battleground where scientific method meets human imagination, where careful analysis confronts the tantalizing possibility that our understanding of the past is fundamentally incomplete. As we stand among these ancient stones, feeling their weight and contemplating their mystery, we're forced to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of human civilization itself. How much of our past has been lost to time, flood, and geological change? How many achievements of ancient peoples lie buried beneath forests, deserts, and seas? And if Gunung Padang truly represents the work of a forgotten civilization, what does that say about the story we tell ourselves about human progress and the march of history? The debate over Gunung Padang forces us to examine not just this one site, but our entire understanding of what ancient peoples could achieve. To truly grasp what's at stake here, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture of human civilization and the assumptions we've built our historical timeline upon. For generations, we've told ourselves a comfortable story about human progress. It goes like this. Our ancestors were primitive hunter-gatherers who gradually developed agriculture around 10,000 years ago. This agricultural revolution led to the first cities in Mesopotamia around 5,000 years ago. Writing was invented, kingdoms rose, and civilization began its steady march toward the modern world. It's a neat, linear progression that makes sense and fits the evidence we've found so far. But what if that story is incomplete? What if it's missing entire chapters that have been erased by time, climate change, and rising seas? This is where Gunung Padang becomes more than just an archaeological site. It becomes a potential key to unlocking a different version of human history, one where advanced civilizations rose and fell long before our textbooks say they should have existed. Consider what the world looked like 27,000 years ago, during the period when the deepest layers of Gunung Padang allegedly show human construction. This was the last glacial maximum, when ice sheets covered vast portions of North America and Europe. But in Southeast Asia, the picture was dramatically different. With so much water locked up in glaciers, sea levels were more than 400 feet lower than they are today. This meant that Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and parts of the South China Sea were all connected by dry land in a massive continent called Sundaland. Sundaland was enormous, roughly twice the size of India, with fertile river valleys, coastal plains, and tropical forests. It would have been an ideal place for human civilization to flourish. The climate was stable, resources were abundant, and the geography provided natural protection from the harsh conditions affecting much of the rest of the world. If you were looking for a place where an advanced, ancient civilization might have developed, Sundaland would be at the top of your list. But here's the cruel twist. When the Ice Age ended and the glaciers melted, all of that prime real estate disappeared beneath the waves. Any cities, temples, libraries, or monuments built on the Sundaland lowlands would have been gradually submerged as sea levels rose. The survivors would have fled to higher ground, to places like the mountains of Java, Sumatra, and the Malay Peninsula, carrying with them whatever knowledge and traditions they could preserve. This scenario provides a compelling context for understanding Gunung Padang. If the site truly dates back 27,000 years, it wouldn't be the work of simple hunter-gatherers. It would be the mountain sanctuary of a sophisticated civilization that knew its lowland cities were doomed by rising waters. The careful astronomical alignments, the massive construction project, the hidden chambers. All of it would make sense as the work of people trying to preserve their most important knowledge and traditions in a place that would survive the coming flood. The evidence for such advanced capabilities isn't limited to Gunung Padang itself. The site's construction techniques reveal knowledge that seems far ahead of its supposed time. The binding agent used to hold the massive stone blocks together has been analyzed and found to be stronger than Roman concrete. This isn't just mud and plant fibers. It's a sophisticated chemical mixture that required understanding of materials, science, and engineering principles. The precision of the stone fitting is equally impressive. These aren't rough blocks stacked on top of each other. They're carefully shaped columns fitted together with tolerances that would challenge modern construction crews. The builders understood principles of load distribution, structural stability, and seismic resistance that allowed their work to survive millennia of earthquakes, volcanic activity, and tropical weather. Perhaps most intriguing are the acoustic properties of the structure. When struck or subjected to certain frequencies, the stones of Gunung Padang resonate in ways that suggest intentional design. Some researchers believe the entire monument was built as a kind of massive musical instrument, capable of producing specific tones and harmonics. Others think these acoustic properties were designed for ceremonial or spiritual purposes, creating altered states of consciousness in people who participated in rituals on the terraces. These sophisticated features point toward a level of knowledge and planning that goes far beyond what we typically associate with prehistoric cultures. They suggest builders who understood not just engineering and construction, but also astronomy, acoustics, chemistry, and perhaps even psychology. This is the profile of an advanced civilization, not a collection of Stone Age nomads. The global context makes this possibility even more intriguing. Around the world, we find other sites that hint at much older origins than mainstream archaeology accepts. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe features massive stone circles with intricate carvings that date to around 11,000 years ago, built by people who supposedly hadn't yet invented agriculture. In Egypt, some researchers argue that the Sphinx shows water erosion patterns that could only have been created during much wetter periods, possibly 12,000 years ago or more. In South America, the ruins of Pumapunku in Bolivia display stone cutting and fitting techniques that seem impossibly advanced for their supposed age. The blocks are cut with such precision that they fit together without mortar, and some show evidence of being shaped with tools we can't identify. In Lebanon, the massive stones of Baalbek include blocks weighing over 800 tons, moved and positioned with techniques that remain mysterious even today. Each of these sites, taken alone, might be dismissed as an anomaly or misinterpreted evidence. But together, they begin to paint a picture of a world where advanced knowledge and capabilities existed much earlier than our current timeline suggests. They hint at the possibility that human civilization has risen and fallen multiple times throughout history, with each cycle building on the achievements of the last while losing other knowledge to catastrophe and time. The flood myths found in cultures around the world take on new significance in this context. Nearly every ancient civilization has stories of a great deluge that destroyed an earlier world. The biblical flood of Noah, the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, the Hindu tales of Manu, the Greek story of Deucalion, the Native American legends of world-ending waters. These stories are found in cultures that had no contact with each other, separated by oceans and thousands of years. Traditional scholarship has explained these similarities as natural responses to local flooding events, or as borrowed stories that spread through cultural contact. But what if there's something else? What if they're cultural memories of actual global catastrophe? The end of Ice Age flooding that submerged Sundaland and destroyed whatever advanced civilization might have flourished there. The time frame fits perfectly. The major sea level rise that followed the end of the last ice age began around 15,000 years ago and continued for several millennia. This period, known to geologists as Meltwater Pulse 1A and 1B, saw rapid and dramatic increases in ocean levels that would have been catastrophic for coastal civilizations. Areas that had been dry land for tens of thousands of years suddenly found themselves hundreds of feet underwater. If Gunung Padang truly represents the work of such a civilization, it would be one of the few surviving monuments to a lost chapter of human history. The mountain's height would have protected it from the rising waters that claimed the lowland cities. Its stone construction would have allowed it to survive the millennia that followed, and its remote location in the mountains of Java would have kept it hidden from most of the world until modern times. This brings us back to the fundamental question that makes Gunung Padang so controversial, not just what it is, but what it represents. If the site is genuinely 27,000 years old, if it was built by an advanced ancient civilization, then everything we think we know about human history needs to be reconsidered. The implications go far beyond archaeology into questions about human potential, the nature of progress, and our place in the long story of civilization on Earth. If you're still here listening, leave a like so we know you're following along, and stay with me as we step into the next part of our journey. The scientific method demands extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, and the controversy over Gunung Padang reflects this healthy skepticism. The retraction of the 2023 paper doesn't end the debate. It simply means that more research is needed before such revolutionary conclusions can be accepted. The site continues to be studied, new techniques are being applied, and additional evidence is being gathered. What makes this investigation so compelling is that it's not just about the past, it's about the future. If advanced civilizations have risen and fallen before, if knowledge has been lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout history, then our current achievements are not the inevitable result of linear progress. They're one point on a much longer timeline of human potential, with chapters both behind and ahead of us that we can barely imagine. Standing among the terraced stones of Gunung Padang today, you can almost feel the weight of these questions pressing down like the tropical air itself. The morning mist clings to the volcanic columns, and local guides speak in hushed tones about the strange things that happen here. They tell you about the stones that seem to hum at certain times of day, about dreams that feel more like memories when you sleep nearby, about the way compasses spin wildly in certain spots on the terraces. These aren't just tourist stories meant to add mystery to the experience. Indonesian researchers have documented genuine acoustic anomalies at the site. When sound waves are directed at specific stone formations, they create resonance patterns that seem almost musical. Some frequencies cause the entire terrace to vibrate in ways that can be felt through your feet. It's as if the ancient builders didn't just construct a monument, they built an instrument, designed to interact with sound and vibration in ways we're only beginning to understand. The electromagnetic readings are equally puzzling. Sensitive instruments detect magnetic field variations across the site that don't match the surrounding geological formations. These anomalies cluster around areas where ground-penetrating radar has identified the most significant underground structures. It's almost as if the hidden chambers are affecting the very fabric of space around them, creating signatures that our modern technology can detect but can't fully explain. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Gunung Padang isn't what we can measure with our instruments. It's what we can see with our eyes if we know how to look. The entire site appears to be laid out according to principles that go far beyond simple construction. The terraces don't just climb the mountain. They follow alignments that track the movement of specific star patterns across the night sky. During the winter solstice, the constellation that the ancient Javanese called the water buffalo rises directly over the highest terrace just as the sun sets. At the spring equinox, a different pattern emerges, with stone alignments pointing toward the rising of what we now call the Southern Cross. These aren't coincidences. They're evidence of builders who understood celestial mechanics with a precision that required centuries of careful observation and mathematical calculation. Think about what that means. To create these alignments, the builders would have needed not just knowledge of astronomy, but also the ability to predict how star positions would change over long periods of time. They would have needed to understand the slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes stellar positions to shift over millennia. This kind of knowledge suggests a civilization with stable institutions capable of maintaining and passing down complex scientific traditions across many generations. The construction materials tell their own story of advanced knowledge. Chemical analysis of the mortar binding the massive stones reveals a composition that includes not just local volcanic ash and organic binders, but also materials that had to be transported from distant locations. Trace elements found in the cement include minerals that occur naturally only in specific mountain ranges hundreds of miles away. Other components appear to have come from coastal regions that are now underwater. This points to a level of trade and resource management that's supposed to be impossible for the time period in question. If Gunung Padang is truly 27,000 years old, its builders were organizing supply chains that stretched across what is now the Indonesian archipelago. They were transporting heavy materials over distances that would challenge modern logistics, all during a period when conventional archaeology says humans were living in small, isolated bands with stone tools and animal hide clothing. The implications become even more staggering when you consider the workforce required for such a project. Conservative estimates suggest that moving and positioning the largest stone columns would have required coordinated efforts by hundreds of people working together with sophisticated knowledge of leverage, counterweights, and structural engineering. The precision of the stone fitting indicates that these weren't random workers dragging rocks up a mountain. They were skilled craftsmen, following detailed plans, working to tolerances that required standardized measurement systems and quality control procedures. Where did all these people come from? How were they fed and housed during what must have been years or even decades of construction? How were their efforts coordinated across the vast scale of the project? These are the kinds of questions that point toward organized society with complex social hierarchies, specialized labor divisions, and economic systems capable of supporting large-scale public works projects. Yet here's where the mystery deepens even further. If such a civilization existed, if it was capable of projects like Gunung Padang, where are all the other traces? Where are the cities, the roads, the harbors, the agricultural terraces that would have supported such an advanced society? Why don't we find pottery shards, metal tools, written records, or burial sites scattered across the landscape of ancient Java? The answer might lie not in what we haven't found, but in where we haven't been looking. Remember that during the Ice Age, when Gunung Padang was allegedly under construction, the geography of Southeast Asia looked completely different. The Java Sea, the South China Sea, much of what we now call Indonesia and Malaysia, all of it was dry land connected by river valleys and coastal plains that stretched for hundreds of miles. If you were a civilization building your cities and harbors during that time, you would have built them in the most advantageous locations, along major rivers, near coastlines, in fertile valleys with good soil and fresh water. All of those locations are now hundreds of feet underwater, buried beneath sediment deposited by 15,000 years of ocean currents and tropical storms. Marine archaeologists working in the shallow seas around Indonesia have begun to find tantalizing hints of what might lie beneath the waves. Sonar surveys have identified geometric patterns on the seafloor that look suspiciously like the foundations of large structures. Core samples from these areas sometimes bring up pottery fragments, worked stone, and other artifacts that seem far older than they should be, according to established timelines. But underwater archaeology in tropical seas is incredibly challenging and expensive. The water is often murky, currents are strong, and coral growth covers everything in layers that take decades to penetrate. Most of what might remain of Sundaland civilization lies under conditions that make investigation nearly impossible with current technology. We're left trying to reconstruct an entire lost world from the few mountain peaks that remained above water when the seas rose. This is where Gunung Padang becomes not just an archaeological site, but a potential window into an entire missing chapter of human history. If it truly represents the highland sanctuary of a Sundaland civilization, then every stone, every chamber, every alignment might be a clue to understanding who these people were and what they achieved before their world was swallowed by the waves. The technology they seem to have possessed raises fascinating questions about the nature of human knowledge itself. We tend to think of technological progress as cumulative and linear. We assume that each generation builds on the achievements of the previous one, adding new discoveries to an ever-growing store of human understanding. But what if that's not how it really works? What if knowledge can be lost as well as gained? If entire fields of understanding can vanish when civilizations collapse? Consider how much of our own technological capability depends on complex global systems that could be disrupted by major catastrophes. If modern civilization faced a global disaster tomorrow, how much of our scientific knowledge would survive? How many people actually understand the principles behind the technologies we use every day? Could survivors rebuild our computers, our medical equipment, our transportation systems from scratch? The builders of Gunung Padang might have faced exactly this kind of challenge. As their lowland cities were gradually submerged and their population scattered, they might have been forced to preserve only their most essential knowledge in forms that could survive the coming Dark Age. Perhaps the mountain itself was designed as a kind of time capsule, encoding important information in stone patterns that would endure long after libraries were flooded and scholars had died. This perspective gives new meaning to the site's local name, the Mountain of Enlightenment. Perhaps it wasn't just called that because it was a place of spiritual significance. Perhaps it earned that name because it was literally designed to preserve enlightenment, to keep the light of knowledge burning through the long night that followed the end of the Ice Age. The acoustic properties we mentioned earlier take on new significance in this context. If the stones were designed to resonate at specific frequencies, they might have been created as teaching tools, ways to encode and transmit information through sound patterns that could be memorized and passed down orally. Many ancient cultures used music and rhythm as mnemonic devices, ways to preserve important knowledge in forms that didn't require written records. The astronomical alignments could serve a similar function, creating a permanent calendar and navigation system that would remain accurate for thousands of years. Future generations could use the site to track seasons, predict eclipses, and maintain accurate timekeeping even if they lost access to more sophisticated instruments. In this sense, Gunung Padang might have been built as a kind of backup system for civilization itself. But we're still left with the fundamental question that has divided the scientific community. Is any of this actually true? The evidence is tantalizing but not conclusive. The radiocarbon dates are disputed, the interpretations are controversial, and the implications are so enormous that they demand extraordinary proof before being accepted. What we can say with certainty is that Gunung Padang is far more complex and sophisticated than it first appears. Even if it's only a few thousand years old, as conservative archaeologists maintain, it still represents a remarkable achievement that challenges our understanding of ancient Indonesian capabilities. The precision of the construction, the scale of the project, and the advanced knowledge required for its completion would be impressive for any historical period. But if the more radical claims prove true, if Gunung Padang really is a 27,000-year-old monument to a lost civilization, then we're looking at something that would fundamentally change our understanding of human history. It would mean that the story of civilization is not a steady upward climb from primitive origins, but a series of cycles where knowledge and capability rise and fall with the fortunes of the societies that possess them. As research continues and new technologies become available, we may eventually get definitive answers to these questions. Advanced dating techniques, more sophisticated underground mapping, and perhaps even excavation of the sealed chambers might provide the evidence needed to settle the debate once and for all. Until then, Gunung Padang stands as a monument to mystery itself, a reminder that there is still so much about our past that we don't understand. Whether it's the work of a forgotten Ice Age civilization or the achievement of a more recent but equally remarkable culture, it speaks to the enduring human drive to create something permanent, something that will outlast the builders and carry their message forward through time. Standing on those ancient terraces, looking out over the misty valleys of Java, you can feel the weight of all these possibilities pressing down like the humid air itself. The stones don't give up their secrets easily, but they continue to whisper their ancient songs to anyone willing to listen carefully enough to hear them. The controversy surrounding Gunung Padang extends far beyond academic circles. It touches on something deeper, something that stirs the imagination and challenges our most basic assumptions about who we are and where we came from. When mainstream archaeologists dismiss the site's extreme antiquity, they're not just rejecting a set of radiocarbon dates. They're defending an entire worldview about human progress and the nature of civilization itself. This worldview holds that complexity emerges gradually, that advanced knowledge develops slowly over many generations, and that the sophisticated civilizations we see in recorded history represent the natural culmination of a long, steady climb from primitive origins. It's a comforting narrative because it suggests that progress is inevitable, that we're living at the pinnacle of human achievement, and that our ancestors were necessarily less capable than we are. But what if that's wrong? What if human capability has always been far greater than we give it credit for? What if the only thing that's changed over the millennia is not our potential, but our circumstances? The builders of Gunung Padang, whether they lived 2,000 years ago or 27,000 years ago, were working with the same human brains we have today. They had the same capacity for innovation, the same ability to solve complex problems, the same drive to create something lasting and meaningful. The difference might not be in their capabilities, but in their priorities. Modern civilization is built around efficiency, mass production, and rapid change. We create things designed to be replaced, upgraded, or discarded within years or decades. But the builders of Gunung Padang were creating something meant to last forever. Every stone was placed with the understanding that it would need to survive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tropical storms, and the slow erosion of countless centuries. This long-term thinking shows up in every aspect of the site's construction. The foundation stones are massive, not because the builders couldn't work with smaller materials, but because massive stones are more stable over geological timescales. The terraces follow natural contours, not because the builders lacked the ability to reshape the landscape, but because working with natural forces rather than against them creates structures that endure. The acoustic properties we discussed aren't accidental by construction. They're carefully engineered features that suggest the builders understood principles of resonance and harmonic frequency that we're only rediscovering today. Some researchers believe these acoustic effects were designed to create specific psychological states in people who participated in ceremonies on the terraces. Others think they might have served more practical purposes, like amplifying human voices across the vast site or creating sound signals that could be heard at great distances. The electromagnetic anomalies detected by modern instruments add another layer to the mystery. These aren't the kinds of effects you'd expect from random piles of volcanic rock. They cluster around areas where subsurface mapping indicates the presence of large chambers or structural features. It's almost as if the builders understood properties of magnetism and electrical fields that allowed them to create intentional effects that our instruments can detect but can't fully explain. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the entire Gunung Padang controversy. The site seems to be designed to interact with technologies that didn't supposedly exist when it was built. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hidden structures that can't be seen from the surface. Seismic equipment detects cavities and chambers that would be invisible to the naked eye. Magnetometers pick up field variations that suggest metallic objects or unusual mineral concentrations deep within the mountain. It's almost as if the builders knew that someday people would develop technologies capable of seeing beneath the surface, and they designed their monument to reveal its secrets only when humanity was ready to understand them. This might sound like science fiction, but it's exactly the kind of long-term planning you'd expect from people who were building something meant to last for tens of thousands of years. The chambers and passages detected by subsurface scanning present their own set of mysteries. If they exist as the instruments suggest, they represent an enormous amount of additional construction work that's completely hidden from view. These aren't small spaces carved into natural rock formations. The radar signatures suggest rooms and corridors large enough for people to walk through, with geometric shapes and regular patterns that indicate intentional design. Why would anyone go to the trouble of creating such extensive underground spaces? The most obvious explanation is storage. Places to keep valuable objects, records, or materials safe from weather and intrusion. But the scale of what's been detected suggests something far more ambitious. These might be ceremonial chambers, places where rituals could be conducted away from public view. They might be living spaces, designed to house people during extended periods of construction or maintenance. Or they might be something else entirely, serving purposes we can't imagine because they relate to knowledge and practices that have been lost to time. The acoustic properties of the surface structures suggest that sound was important to the builders. What if the underground chambers were designed to amplify or modify these acoustic effects in ways that created experiences we can't recreate with modern technology? The binding agent used throughout the construction continues to puzzle materials scientists. Chemical analysis reveals a composition that includes volcanic ash, organic materials, and mineral additives that create a concrete-like substance stronger and more durable than anything the Romans developed. But the specific mixture varies throughout the site, as if different formulations were used for different purposes or different phases of construction. Some samples contain microscopic metallic particles that appear to be iron or copper compounds, but in concentrations and distributions that don't match any known natural processes. These might be the remains of metal tools used during construction, or they might be intentional additives designed to give the cement specific properties. The presence of these metallic elements in structures that are supposedly pre-Metal Age adds another layer of complexity to the dating controversy. The precision of the stone fitting continues to impress modern engineers who visit the site. These aren't rough blocks stacked on top of each other with gaps filled by smaller stones. The massive columns fit together with tolerances measured in millimeters, creating joints so tight that you can't slip a knife blade between them. This level of precision requires not just skilled craftsmanship, but also standardized measurement systems and quality control procedures that we associate with much later historical periods. The tools required for such work present their own puzzles. The volcanic andesite used throughout the site is extremely hard, rating between 5 and 6 on the Mohs scale. Working with this material requires tools harder than steel, yet the conventional timeline for the site's construction places it well before the development of metallurgy in the region. Bronze Age tools would barely scratch the surface of these stones, and iron implements wouldn't have been available for thousands of years after the alleged construction date. This tool problem appears at megalithic sites around the world. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, researchers have found evidence of precision cutting and drilling in stones even harder than those at Gunung Padang. The famous Easter Island statues were carved from volcanic tuff using techniques that remain mysterious. In Egypt, the granite blocks in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid show tool marks that suggest cutting methods we can't identify. The pattern suggests that ancient builders around the world had access to technologies for working with stone that we don't fully understand. These might have been sophisticated applications of techniques we think of as primitive, or they might represent knowledge that has been completely lost to modern civilization. Either way, they point toward capabilities that don't fit comfortably within our established timelines for technological development. The water management systems at Gunung Padang provide another example of advanced engineering disguised as simple construction. The site receives enormous amounts of rainfall during Indonesia's monsoon season, yet there's no evidence of erosion damage or water accumulation that would threaten the structural integrity of the terraces. This isn't an accident of geography. It's the result of carefully planned drainage systems that channel water away from vulnerable areas while preventing the kind of soil erosion that destroys most ancient sites. These drainage features aren't obvious to casual visitors, but they're built into the fundamental design of the terraces. The slight slopes of the platforms, the placement of the retaining walls, the gaps between certain stone columns, all of these features work together to manage water flow in ways that protect the structure from Indonesia's intense tropical weather. This kind of integrated engineering requires understanding of hydrology, soil mechanics, and long-term environmental planning that suggests builders with extensive experience in large-scale construction projects. The agricultural implications are equally intriguing. The terraced design of Gunung Padang would have made it ideal for intensive farming, creating flat-growing areas on what was originally a steep volcanic slope. Similar terracing systems throughout the ancient world, from the Andes to the rice paddies of Asia, demonstrate how this technology can dramatically increase food production in mountainous regions. If the site truly dates back tens of thousands of years, it might represent one of the earliest examples of agricultural engineering, predating the supposed development of farming by many millennia. Even if it's only a few thousand years old, it still demonstrates sophisticated understanding of sustainable agriculture and landscape modification that challenges our assumptions about ancient capabilities. The preservation of the site itself raises fascinating questions about the knowledge systems of its builders. Stone structures in tropical environments face constant threats from plant growth, chemical weathering, and seismic activity. The fact that Gunung Padang has survived in recognizable form for any significant period of time suggests that its builders understood these threats and designed their monument to resist them. The choice of materials, the methods of construction, even the overall design philosophy all reflect deep understanding of how stone structures interact with tropical environments over long periods. This isn't the kind of knowledge you develop in a single generation. It requires accumulated experience passed down through many centuries of building, testing, and learning from both successes and failures. This points toward building traditions that stretch much further back in time than the visible monuments themselves. The techniques used at Gunung Padang represent the culmination of long experimental processes, the final refined version of methods that had been tested and improved over many generations. Even if the site is only as old as conservative archaeologists claim, it still represents the end point of technological development that began much earlier. The spiritual dimensions of the site continue to resonate with modern visitors, just as they did with the ancient Sundanese people who considered the mountain sacred. There's something about the place that affects people on levels that have nothing to do with archaeological theories or scientific measurements. Visitors report unusual dreams, heightened emotional states, and intuitive insights that seem to come from the environment itself rather than their conscious minds. These effects might be psychological responses to the site's impressive scale and mysterious atmosphere. They might be products of suggestion and expectation, influenced by local legends and the knowledge that this is a place of ancient significance. But they might also be intentional features, designed by builders who understood how environmental factors can influence human consciousness and spiritual experience. The acoustic properties we've discussed could certainly play a role in creating altered states of awareness. Specific sound frequencies are known to affect brainwave patterns and can induce experiences ranging from deep relaxation to heightened alertness. If the builders of Gunung Padang deliberately engineered these acoustic effects, they might have created a kind of ancient technology for influencing human consciousness that we're only beginning to understand. The electromagnetic anomalies detected at the site might contribute to these experiences as well. The human brain is an electrical organ, sensitive to magnetic fields and other environmental influences that we don't consciously perceive. Variations in local electromagnetic conditions could certainly affect how people feel and think when they visit the site, creating experiences that seem spiritual or mystical, but actually have measurable physical causes. Whether these effects are intentional or accidental, they add another dimension to the mystery of Gunung Padang. The site doesn't just challenge our understanding of ancient construction techniques and historical timelines. It raises questions about the relationship between human consciousness and environmental design, about whether ancient builders might have possessed knowledge of psychology and neuroscience that we've only recently rediscovered. As we stand among these ancient stones, feeling their weight and contemplating their message across the centuries, we're confronted with the humbling possibility that our ancestors knew things we've forgotten. Not necessarily about technology in the sense of machines and electronics, but about deeper principles of how human beings relate to their environment, to each other, and to the cosmos itself. The debate over Gunung Padang's age and origin will undoubtedly continue as new evidence emerges and new technologies become available for investigation. But regardless of when it was built or by whom, the site stands as a testament to human ambition, creativity, and the enduring drive to create something meaningful that will outlast our brief individual lives. In the end, perhaps that's the most important message of Gunung Padang. Not the specific details of who built it or when, but the demonstration that human beings have always been capable of far more than we give them credit for. Whether the builders lived 2,000 years ago or 27,000 years ago, they possessed the same fundamental capacities we have today: the ability to dream big dreams, to work together toward common goals, and to create monuments that speak across the vast distances of time. The mountain continues to guard its secrets, patient and enduring as only stone can be. But it has already given us its most important gift: the reminder that human history is far richer, far stranger, and far more wonderful than we ever dared to imagine. And perhaps in our own time, we can learn to build with the same vision and ambition that guided those ancient hands as they placed stone upon stone, reaching towards something eternal beneath the endless Indonesian sky. The mystery deepens when we consider what happened to the knowledge itself. If Gunung Padang truly represents the work of an advanced civilization, where did their understanding go? How does an entire body of sophisticated engineering and astronomical knowledge simply vanish from the historical record? This is where the story becomes not just about stones and dates, but about the fragile nature of human memory itself. Think about how knowledge travels through time. In our modern world, we store information in books, computers, and digital archives that we assume will last forever. But civilizations throughout history have learned the hard way that knowledge can disappear faster than the monuments built to preserve it. Libraries burn, languages die out, oral traditions get interrupted by war, famine, or natural disaster. The scholars who understand complex successors. What seems systems pass away without training permanent and secure in one generation can become completely forgotten just a few centuries later. We've seen this pattern repeat throughout recorded history, and there's no reason to think ancient civilizations were immune to the same forces. If the builders of Gunung Padang possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and material science, they would have faced the same challenge that confronts every civilization: how to pass that knowledge on to future generations. The mountain itself might have been their solution, a kind of three-dimensional textbook written in stone rather than on paper or clay tablets. Consider how the site's astronomical alignments could function as a teaching tool. Someone standing on the terraces during specific times of year would see celestial events unfold exactly as the builders intended. The stone columns frame particular stars and constellations, creating a kind of observatory that doesn't require instruments or written instructions. The knowledge is built into the architecture itself, accessible to anyone who knows how to read the signs. The acoustic properties we've discussed could serve a similar educational function. If specific tones and rhythms were used to encode important information, then the resonant stones become a kind of memory palace, preserving knowledge in forms that could survive even if written records were lost. Indigenous cultures around the world have used song and rhythm as mnemonic devices for thousands of years, maintaining incredibly complex bodies of information through purely oral traditions. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Even the most carefully preserved knowledge can be lost if the people who understand it are scattered or destroyed. And the end of the Ice Age, when sea levels rose and drowned vast areas of inhabited land, would have been exactly the kind of catastrophic event that breaks the chain of cultural transmission. Imagine being part of a sophisticated civilization watching your coastal cities slowly disappear beneath rising waters. Some people would flee to higher ground, carrying whatever portable knowledge they could manage. Others might try to stay and preserve what they could in permanent forms, building monuments like Gunung Padang to serve as repositories of essential information. But in the chaos of such massive displacement, much would inevitably be lost. The survivors who reached the highlands might remember fragments of the old knowledge, but without the social institutions and educational systems that had originally developed it, those fragments would gradually decay. Over generations, precise astronomical calculations might become vague seasonal observations. Complex engineering principles might be reduced to simple construction techniques. Advanced scientific understanding might survive only as myth and legend. This process of knowledge degradation helps explain one of the most puzzling aspects of ancient civilizations around the world. Archaeological evidence often shows periods of remarkable sophistication, followed by apparent decline, as if entire cultures forgot how to do things they had previously mastered. Traditional explanations focus on external factors like invasion or environmental change, but internal factors like the loss of specialized knowledge might be equally important. The Maya civilization provides a striking example. At their height, Maya astronomers could predict eclipses centuries in advance and calculate planetary positions with extraordinary accuracy. Maya engineers built cities with sophisticated water management systems and architectural achievements that still impress modern visitors. Maya mathematicians developed concepts like zero independently of other cultures and worked with numbers that stretched into millions. Yet within a few centuries, much of this knowledge had apparently vanished. Later Maya communities maintained some of the traditions, but the level of mathematical and astronomical sophistication had clearly declined. The physical monuments remained, but the intellectual framework that had created them was partially lost. Archaeological evidence suggests this pattern repeated in many other ancient civilizations, from the Indus Valley to Easter Island. At Gunung Padang, we might be seeing the end result of a similar process. If the site truly represents the highland refuge of a Sundaland civilization, it could be the place where survivors tried to preserve their most essential knowledge in permanent form. The astronomical alignments, the acoustic properties, the hidden chambers, all of these features might have been designed as educational tools for future generations. But if those future generations were scattered, traumatized, and struggling to survive in a world dramatically changed by rising seas, they might not have been able to fully understand or maintain what their ancestors had built. The monument would survive as a sacred site, revered and protected, but its deeper meanings might gradually fade into legend and folklore. This interpretation gives new significance to the local Sundanese traditions about Gunung Padang. The stories of King Siliwangi trying to build a palace in a single night might be cultural memories of much older construction projects, distorted by centuries of retelling, but preserving essential elements of the original events. The reverence for the site as a place of spiritual power might reflect dim memories of its original function as a center of learning and knowledge. Even the name itself, the Mountain of Enlightenment, suggests that local communities have always understood this place as somehow connected to wisdom and understanding. They might not remember the specific details of what their ancestors achieved here, but they've maintained the sense that this mountain holds something important, something worth preserving and protecting. The electromagnetic and acoustic anomalies detected by modern instruments take on new meaning in this context. If the original builders designed these effects intentionally, they might have been creating a kind of sensory environment that enhanced learning and memory. Specific frequencies and electromagnetic fields are known to affect human brain activity in ways that can improve concentration, recall, and pattern recognition. Ancient mystery schools around the world used environmental factors to create altered states of consciousness that facilitated learning and spiritual experience. The underground chambers at Eleusis in Greece, the sound effects in Malta's hypogeum, the acoustic properties of temples throughout the ancient world, all suggest that our ancestors understood principles of environmental psychology that we're only beginning to rediscover. If Gunung Padang was designed according to similar principles, it might represent one of the most sophisticated examples of this ancient science. The hidden chambers detected by ground-penetrating radar could be spaces specifically engineered to create optimal conditions for teaching and learning. The acoustic resonance might have been designed to enhance memory formation. The electromagnetic effects might have been intended to influence brainwave patterns in ways that facilitated the absorption of complex information. But knowledge of how to use these systems effectively would have been just as vulnerable to loss as any other kind of specialized understanding. The physical infrastructure might survive for thousands of years, but without the cultural context that gave it meaning, it becomes merely mysterious rather than functional. We can detect the effects with our instruments, but we can't necessarily recreate the experiences the original builders intended. This brings us back to one of the fundamental questions raised by Gunung Padang. How much of human knowledge has been lost over the course of our species' long history? If advanced civilizations have risen and fallen multiple times, if knowledge has been accumulated and then forgotten in cycles we can barely detect, then our current understanding of human capability might be severely limited. We tend to assume that because we can't do something today, our ancestors couldn't do it either. But what if that's backwards? What if many of the capabilities we think of as impossibly advanced were once common knowledge, lost during periods of civilizational collapse, and only partially rediscovered in more recent times? The precision stone cutting found at megalithic sites around the world might represent not primitive achievements that were remarkable for their time, but degraded remnants of much more sophisticated traditions. The astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient monuments might be fragments of scientific systems that were once far more comprehensive. The mathematical concepts preserved in ancient texts might be simplified versions of theoretical frameworks that were once much more elaborate. This perspective doesn't diminish human achievement. It actually suggests that our ancestors were capable of far more than we've given them credit for. It implies that the human mind has always had the same fundamental capacities for innovation, discovery, and creative problem-solving that we see in modern scientists and engineers. The difference might not be in our capabilities, but in our circumstances and the accumulated knowledge available to us. The builders of Gunung Padang, whether they lived 2,000 years ago or 27,000 years ago, were working with brains that were essentially identical to ours. They had the same capacity for spatial reasoning that allows modern architects to design complex buildings. They had the same pattern recognition abilities that help contemporary scientists identify mathematical relationships. They had the same collaborative instincts that enable large-scale projects today. What they might not have had was the accumulated scientific knowledge that we take for granted, but in some areas, they might have had knowledge that we've lost. Their understanding of how to work with natural materials might have been more sophisticated than ours. Their knowledge of astronomical cycles might have been more detailed and practical. Their grasp of how human consciousness responds to environmental factors might have been more nuanced and effective. The acoustic properties of Gunung Padang suggest builders who understood sound in ways that go beyond our current engineering capabilities. The electromagnetic anomalies indicate knowledge of magnetic fields and electrical phenomena that we can detect but can't fully explain. The longevity of the construction demonstrates understanding of materials science and structural engineering that has allowed the monument to survive conditions that would destroy most modern buildings. These aren't necessarily examples of lost technology in the sense of missing machines or forgotten devices. They might represent lost wisdom about how to work with natural forces rather than against them, how to create structures that enhance rather than disrupt their environments, how to build things that serve multiple purposes across many generations. Modern construction tends to be specialized and temporary. We build houses that last decades, bridges that require constant maintenance, and monuments that need preservation efforts to survive even a few centuries. But the builders of Gunung Padang created something designed to endure for millennia, to serve functions we can barely understand, and to reveal new secrets as human knowledge advances. This long-term thinking represents a fundamentally different approach to problem solving than what we see in contemporary society. Instead of optimizing for immediate efficiency or short-term profits, the ancient builders were optimizing for permanence, meaning, and enduring value. They were creating something that would continue to teach and inspire long after they themselves were forgotten. The controversy over Gunung Padang's age and origin reflects our discomfort with this possibility. If our ancestors were capable of such achievements, if they possessed knowledge that we've lost, if human civilization has risen and fallen multiple times throughout history, then our current moment becomes just one chapter in a much longer story. We're not necessarily the culmination of human progress. We might be somewhere in the middle of a cycle that is repeated many times before. This doesn't mean we should romanticize the past or assume that ancient civilizations were more advanced than ours in every way. Our medical knowledge, our global communication systems, our understanding of chemistry and physics, these represent genuine advances that have improved human life in measurable ways. But it does suggest that progress isn't always linear, that knowledge can be gained and lost, and that our ancestors might have understood some things better than we do. The mountain itself seems designed to teach this lesson. Standing among its ancient terraces, feeling the weight of stone that has endured for thousands of years, hearing the subtle acoustic effects that still resonate after all this time, you can't help but feel humbled by the achievement of the builders, whoever they were and whenever they lived. The stones don't care about our academic debates or our theoretical timelines. They don't worry about peer review or scientific consensus. They simply continue doing what they were designed to do, preserving something important, maintaining their alignments, resonating with the frequencies they were built to amplify. waiting patiently for humanity to develop the wisdom needed to understand their full message. Perhaps that's the most profound lesson Gunung Padang has to offer. Not the specific details of ancient construction techniques or lost civilizations, but the reminder that human beings have always been capable of creating things larger and more lasting than themselves. The mountain stands as proof that our species has always had the ability to think beyond immediate needs, to work together toward distant goals, and to embed meaning in stone that can speak across the vast distances of time. Whether the builders lived during the last ice age or in more recent millennia, they succeeded in creating something that continues to inspire wonder, provoke questions, and challenge assumptions thousands of years after their deaths. In an age when so much of what we build is designed to be disposable, when planned obsolescence drives much of our economy, when few things are expected to last more than a few decades, Gunung Padang reminds us that it's possible to create with different priorities, different timescales, and different definitions of success. The mystery will continue as new research methods become available and new evidence emerges from the depths of the mountain. But regardless of what future discoveries might reveal, the site has already accomplished its most important function. It has forced us to expand our sense of human possibility and to question comfortable assumptions about the past, the present, and the future. In the end, perhaps that's enough. Perhaps the real treasure hidden within Gunung Padang isn't ancient artifacts or lost technologies, but the simple recognition that human beings have always been capable of far more than we imagine. The stones have kept their vigil for millennia, waiting for us to develop the eyes to see and the wisdom to understand. And now, finally, we're beginning to listen. As we reach the end of our journey through the mists of Gunung Padang, we're left with more questions than answers. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Whether this ancient mountain holds the remains of a 27,000-year-old civilization or represents the remarkable achievements of a more recent but equally sophisticated culture, one thing is undeniable. It challenges everything we thought we knew about human capability and the story of our past. The stones themselves don't lie. The precision of their placement, the sophistication of their acoustic properties, the mystery of their hidden chambers, all speak to builders who possessed knowledge and skills that demand our respect and wonder. Whether they lived during the Ice Age or just a few thousand years ago, they created something designed to outlast empires and speak across the vast distances of time. The debate will continue, new evidence will emerge, and future technologies may finally unlock the secrets sealed within those hidden chambers. But Gunung Padang has already given us its most precious gift, the humbling recognition that human history is far stranger, far richer, and far more wonderful than we ever dared to imagine. What do you think? Could there be lost chapters in our past waiting to be rediscovered? Let me know in the comments below, and if this journey through ancient mysteries has sparked your curiosity, please like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the forgotten corners of human history. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember that the past still has secrets to share with those willing to listen. Good night.